Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to the podcast. This is Big Reptile Talk, the podcast where I bring amazing reptile content creators to you. But before we do that, we got to pay those bills. This podcast would not be possible without our podcast sponsors. So let's go ahead and give them some shout outs. Shout out to Mile High Mutations. Amazing guy. He's producing amazing snakes. Make sure you hit up his morph market. Make sure you hit up his Instagram. Tell him Derek's Reptile sent you. Shout out to my guy Eugene over at Morphed Ambitions. Man, he's producing amazing high quality ball pythons. And not just that, he sells mulch. So make sure you hit him up. Tell him Derek Reptile sent you. Shout out to my brother Paul over at Large Marge Morse. He's not producing reptiles right now, but he's acquiring some major firepower. So thank you for supporting the channel, man. I appreciate you. Shout out to my brother in Canada, man. My big homie Mike, MKL Exotics. He's producing amazing hognose snakes. If you're into those rear fang venomous snakes, he's got them. Hog noses are beautiful animals, and he's producing them. So much love to you. Fries Critters, man, you support the channel, and without you, man, there would be no me, man. So I appreciate you for being a channel sponsor. Mad River Serpents and Rattery, that's my brother, man. Y'all make sure y'all hit him up. He's producing amazing ball pythons as well. It feels like there's so many people producing amazing ball pythons, and we're going to give them all some love. Shout out to Moreno over at You Already Know Morse. He's producing amazing exantic ball pythons, and anybody knows I'm low maintenance. I love exantics. I love pastels. Those are two of my favorite more. So much love to you, brother. Matt Yates, Reptile Company, man. I see you, brother. Just amazing snakes. I appreciate your support. Shout out to Ball of Hands Pythons, man. Y'all make sure you go give him some love. He's one of my good friends, man. He's producing amazing snakes. So hit him up, check him out. King's Reptiles, definitely a group to be watching. Husband and wife doing their thing. They're producing boas, and not just boas, amazing ball pythons. So make sure you hit them up. Low Life Exotics, man, you're my brother. I appreciate you for supporting the channel. Thank you so much, brother. Y'all make sure you hit Basement Pythons too, man. They producing amazing snakes. Just a great husband and wife team. And not just that, shout out to Heedland Hatchery, man. Amazing guy. He's producing amazing snakes too. I appreciate you for supporting me, man. And not just that, Stone Age Ball Pythons, the king of reaction videos. 400,000 subscribers on Instagram, and not just that, he's producing amazing snakes as well. And last but not least, our new sponsor, man, my brother Ozzy Boys, man, doesn't need an introduction. He sponsors the channel. He believes in me. So Ozzy, I appreciate you, man. Now, this is going to be an amazing podcast. When we come back, we're going to have Garrett Hartle from Reach Out Reptiles. Like, how insane is that, man? Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Garrett Hartle.
Big reptile talk. Yeah, we working. Big reptile talk. When it comes to talking about snakes, yeah, love that we got for them effect. Yeah, big reptile talk. Let's talk about reptiles.
Man, the man himself, Garrett Hartle. I'm so happy that you're here, man. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How you doing, Derek? What's up, guys? It's awesome to be here, man. I'll tell you what, you were talking about, this is the podcast where you have such amazing guests. I think you probably more than any person probably has like the best collection of people that you've had on your channel than anybody I know, honestly.
Who was your favorite? I'm curious.
Like on your podcast in particular, or just my favorite person
that I've had on my show? I've had a whole bunch of you. Like I've had Jake the Snake too.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that. I had an action figure of his when I was a kid. Man, I don't know. There's been so many. I really enjoyed your talk with Tom Crutchfield. That was a good one. Kevin McCurley was a really good one. there's been so many. I don't want to take away from any of them because I think a lot of them had a lot of good stuff to say.
Well,
I
I
really
appreciate
like your
that,
interviewing style. I like your questions, and you haven't really told me much about what we're doing here. So I'm pretty excited to see where we go with this kind of stuff. So.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Before we start the podcast, I'll make sure y'all support USARC. So important. They out there fighting for us, and this guy's on the front lines, helping them and everything. We love you for that. Now, before we get started, you got to answer this question, man. So I had Cusco on the channel, and
Yes.
I had a question. I said, we love Brian Barczyk. We know what he's going through. God bless him. I said, what if we could have a charity wrestling match and all of our top reptile content creators came together and had a wrestling match? And I asked them, who do you think will win? Who do you think will win? And one of the questions
between
I asked,
Cusco and me.
Yes, one of the matches was, and matter of fact, we're not gonna talk about that match first. I'm gonna ask you the same question. So we're gonna go through. You tell me who do you think would win, and then we'll talk about you next. So first match: Brian Barczyk, Jay Brewer. Who's winning? Charity wrestling match to raise money for USARC.
Oh man, I think that's a toss-up. I mean, both of those guys. Their physical capability is one thing. Jay's always like working out and dieting, and so is Brian is very, very physical, and he's always working out and improving himself. But I think it comes down, for me, it would come down to the willpower of those two, and that is like two raging bulls. Honestly, I know both of them really well, and that's a match I would want to see. I can't call that match. I honestly can't call that match. If both of them wanted to win, that would be a tough one. I'd go. Don't get me wrong. This is just for fun, shits and giggles.
Okay,
sure.
Shits and giggles, charity wrestling match.
Yeah.
I love Barczyk, but I'm gonna say Brewer because I feel like Barczyk is more in shape, but I feel like Brewer got a few more cheeseburgers on Barczyk, so he's got a little more
size
weight.
Advantage for sure. Brewer has the size advantage.
He's got a little more weight on him. So all right, next match.
He's also pretty like just scrappy in business and life in general, and Barczyk is very nice. You know what I mean? But when it comes to like the gumption to get something done, that's a head-to-head you don't want to miss. I'm telling you what.
I agree. Okay. Next match. Dave Kaufman versus Kevin McCurley.
Kevin McCurley. I mean, you got to realize that wrestling Dave Kaufman is like wrestling a literal Sasquatch. The man is absolutely a giant, but he's like a big teddy bear. You know what I mean? If you've ever given Dave a hug, he gives great hugs. Kevin is all about the fight. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, he's like Mr. Karate, and he's had so much pent up aggression about the things that he's passionate about. He's just waiting to unleash it on somebody. And if that opened up on Dave Kaufman, I love you, Dave, but I don't think you'd stand a chance.
I'm going with Dave. I love Kevin. Kevin's a great guy, but I'm going with Dave. I'm gonna tell you why. Kevin knows jujitsu, right? And that's good.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But jujitsu is nothing to somebody that's 15 feet tall.
He is almost 15 feet tall for real.
I love it. All right, next match.
Okay.
Wicked's Wicked Reptiles versus Clint.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna give that one to Adam. I mean, Adam is about this tall. You know what I mean? He's about up to Dave Kaufman's knee. But he's freaking yoked. You know, he is freaking yoked. And Clint would just be so excited to be participating in life. You know what I mean? That I don't think he would even realize it was a fight.
I love it. Now, the last question I asked Cusco was between you and him. And do you know who he said will win? He said he will mop the floors with you.
I'm sure he said that. No, he's a punk. I would definitely win that fight if that was a real fight.
I disagree because I gave the match to you. And when I was talking to Cusco on my podcast, I said, Cusco, I love you, but I feel like you're the industry hippie. I feel like Garrett would whoop you. He said, nuh-uh, I got a video. Watch this. I'm going to send you this video. And it's a video of him wrestling you and throwing you in a pool.
Hold on a minute. Wait just a minute there. You don't have any context. That video is from my channel, Reach Out Reptiles channel. What you don't realize about that moment was how greasy Brian Cusco was in that moment. He was like so lathered up in coconut oil that you don't stand a chance. I try to go grab him and stuff. You just go right through the man. His molecules separated, and I slid right through the middle. No, that was not a fair fight. No, we definitely need to have a rematch. Now, I will say this. Brian is definitely more like physically trained than I am. I sit here in my messy office and think about snakes all day long. And Brian Cusco is like out there running and getting in shape. So he's definitely in much better shape. But yeah, I don't know. I think that if we needed to wrestle in it and it mattered for a win, I think my willpower overpowers him. I know he would disagree, but I demand a rematch.
I love it, man. I love it. Super fun, shits and giggles, raising money. I love it, man. My podcast, I like to learn a little bit about you and have fun. I think comedy is so important. If your person has fun when they're talking to you, they're gonna come back. You know what I mean? So now, yeah. Let's go to the next question, man. You are the king of the super dwarf, and I love that. But I want to rewind. I want the backstory of Reach Out Reptiles. And what I mean by that is, I had Ozzy Boys on, and he told me, he said, Derek, I didn't always used to breed snakes full time. He said, I was a businessman. He said, it took everything in me to quit this business and say, I'm doing snakes full time. So I want to know, what were you doing before you were breeding snakes full time?
Oh, I jumped all around. I did so many things. It wasn't even funny. I mean, I started when I was pretty young. My parents were kind of like, my folks worked a lot and weren't around a lot. So I had a lot of free reign in what I did. So like, I'd tell them I was going to a friend's house and I'd go to Herpin in Mexico instead, or, stuff like, pretty high level stuff. There's a few podcasts I've been on where I've told a lot of stories of my like travels and things, but just to give you for instance, the first time I traveled internationally by myself without anybody, I was 11, and
wow.
I started from them and kept going on, which is crazy because I have an 11-year-old daughter now. And I'm like, what were my parents thinking? But I only went to Jamaica, so it wasn't too crazy. But I was there for a month by myself. So, yeah, but professionally, before I did that, I didn't go to college or any of that. I right out of high school, I started traveling, and then I just kind of caught from one thing to the next. So for the most part, my job was in business development and marketing. So it's kind of like find an idea, and I worked at, that translates to all kinds of industries, right? So you come into an industry, you figure out who the business is, what their value proposition is, what is it that they have to offer the world, and then you try to connect it with as many people as possible and build those connections. So I did that in a number of different industries, and the more foreign the industry was to me, the better.
Okay.
Right. And so I definitely did it with reptiles. I worked with you. I mean, you mentioned Jay versus Barchek. I worked with Jay a long time ago now. But I did a lot of business development and sales stuff with him, which was the first time in the industry. I love animals. I worked on like ranches out west and things like that. But then even what moved me here to Pittsburgh was a company that did like bridge inspections and stuff like that. So totally out in left field for anything that I had done. But it was kind of about figuring out where the true value is in any company or person or offering or whatever. And then how to communicate that to the world. So if I could wrap up, that's what I'm good at.
I love that. So in essence is, you did so much stuff, and I think that's what we all do. You had to go out there and find yourself, and finally you said, okay, I want to breed snakes. So, you're breeding snakes, you're breeding snakes. My question to you is, at what point in your career did you say, okay, I have something, I'm on to something?
My wife told me, actually. So I've always loved reptiles. I think you could, there's a lot going on. And thank you, by the way, for repping USARK. That's a big deal in the industry right now. Those guys are really, Phil Goss is amazing. The amount of time and effort and just going above and beyond for everybody in the industry. I can't think of a single other person that could do his job. But so we really need to support him and everybody over there at USARK. But yeah, take all that stuff away, make everything I do illegal tomorrow. And I'm still going to be catching frogs out in the backyard and stuff like that. Just having a good time with animals wherever I go. I've always loved that. Always loved getting out in nature and connecting with those. And then really my particular bent was just communicating the value of those to people. So I've had all kinds of animals, and I had this cycle, Derek, where I'm like, I want to get a boa, or I want to get a carpet python, or I want to get a monitor lizard, or a dart frog, or anything. I have had every reptile I've set out to have.
Right.
And after having them for a while, I don't know if you've ever done this when you're keeping, you go get a new animal, you're all stoked on it, you set it all up, this little world, and you're just excited to be with it and watch its natural behaviors and everything. And then after a while, I'd be like, you know what? The snake, lizard, frog, whatever it is just not as entertaining as my super dwarfs. and if I didn't have this frog right now, I could have one more super dwarf, you know? And that's honestly what it was. Like literally when I started Reach Out Reptiles, I had some veiled chameleons. I had Madagascan leaf nose snakes. I had Malagasy diving skinks. If you know what those are, Amphiglossus genus. I had some bugs and stuff. What else did I have? Oh, I had a big collection of scrub pythons. Loved the scrub pythons. I had bloods. I had a Mexican beaded lizard.
You had a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. And that's just a snapshot of what I happen to have when I started Reach Out Reptiles as a company. You know, I've had so many things over the years, but super dwarves have always been kind of like my first and true love. You know, they weren't the first animal that I bred. They weren't the first animal that I kept, but they were among the first of like exotic animals where it's like the world is open to me now. My mom finally said yes, you know, talking back when I was a kid, that I could have a reptile. What am I going to get? And literally the second snake I got was a Jampea reticulated python. I've been in love with them ever since.
I love that.
So, yeah. And so I just kind of figured, you know, I was keeping them. Breeding was a part of it. It was never like a profit thing for me back then. It was just part of like enjoying the animal and taking it through its complete and natural life cycle. Right. And so I bred them and I would just kind of like wholesale them to my buddies. I was breeding a lot of cool stuff that other people didn't have. And they're like, oh, I'd love to have some of that on my table at the next show. And I'm like, here's 20 of them. Write me a check. Whatever you think is fair is fine. You know, nice. And we did that kind of thing. Big shout out to Titan Retics, Keith, my boy. He was a big part of what I was doing back then.
Nice.
And yeah, my wife was just kind of like, I don't know. I think you should quit your job and do this. You're always making money for other people, talking about like my corporate jobs and stuff like this. So you should do this for yourself. And at the time, super dwarves have been around for a long time, but they weren't popular at all. It was kind of like the snake that everybody forgot. Like what I used to hear back then was like all the retic people would say, like, why would you want a retic to stay small? You know what I mean? And people, if they weren't retics, they didn't want retics at all. So they completely had no niche and no market whatsoever. And I was like, I don't understand why people don't see that this is the perfect snake to keep and breed. So if you want the whole experience, this is the perfect snake. And nobody in the world seems to get it. And that's when I started Reach Out Reptiles. I started on an idea that was completely unproven, that super dwarves were the ultimate animal. And ever since then, we've just been communicating that message. So that's how that went down.
It's so amazing. You know, I'm not saying that I'm poor or anything, but I live in an apartment. You know, it's not that big. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, me, my wife, and my son. And, you know, to have upwards of 14 to 15 animals, you know, it feels good. And I say that to say it feels good to have your significant other support your passion. You know what I mean?
Oh, big time. Yeah,
and now
absolutely.
Since we're talking about your significant other, I want to have fun. Here's another hot seat question.
Oh boy.
You have so many amazing projects.
Okay.
And I want to know, have you ever fibbed to your wife? Have you ever said, honey, I really need this super dwarf. It's $1,000. And she ended up finding out it was $4,000.
No. But I was very careful to set myself up in a winning position early on in our relationship. So the only time I told my wife anything to do with money and reptiles was animals that I already had when we got married. So when we got married, I had a large, vibrant collection of like Australian dwarf monitors. right? So like Ackies, pill bars, Kimberly's, that kind of stuff. And the Ackies were breeding like crazy for me. And I would show her how much money they made at the end of the year because she was so sick of me keeping them in our tiny, we started out pretty poor too. We were in like a 1-room apartment, out there in California. And I'd show her how much money they made us at the end of the year. And then she's like, okay, the lizards can stick around. But after that, I told her, I was like, she would go to reptile shows. Like she had an idea of like snakes and how much they cost and stuff like that. But I told her, I was like, I started a separate bank account for reptiles very early on in our relationship. And I told her, I was like, look, this doesn't impact you because I'm only going to spend reptile money on reptiles. So in other words, I could have whatever I wanted as long as I made, bye, Marilyn, have a good day. But we're wrapping up here at the shop. So yeah, if I made the money with reptiles, she didn't care if I spent it on reptiles. And every now and then I do something nice or go above and beyond for her with reptile money. So she was always okay with it. Now she's active and participates a lot more in the business, and she's seen some of the numbers. I got to tell you, man, like people ask me to fib on invoices to them so they could show their wife their $500 invoice for their $5,000 snake that they bought. So I'm not supportive of that, but you know what I mean? The customer's always right, I guess. So I know what you're talking about, but yeah, now that she's seen some of the numbers, she thinks I'm pretty crazy. She's always been very supportive though. And I'll tell you, there's one instance that really just shows how crazy it is. I gave her a call and I was like, honey, I'm going to need you to sign some paperwork because I need to refinance our house so I can take some money out of our equity to buy a snake. And she's like, wow, I'll sign it. She goes, I don't want to know. I'll sign it. Just send me the paper.
That's a good wife. Shout out to Miss Hartle.
She's crazy. Everyone thinks I'm the crazy one because she seems so reasonable. But when you do stuff like that, man, that's letting me have such a long leash is truly the crazy part, right? So.
Now, I love that. Now, I want to talk about, actually, before we talk about it, I want to ask you another hot seat question just for shits and giggles. Right. And not to brag or boast, but I have 70,000 followers on YouTube. And your YouTube is at 30,000 and your Instagram is at 100,000. So my question to you is, I have what's called a no trash number. And what I mean by that is when I hit a certain number on my YouTube and it's 100,000, I feel like I'm allowed to tell my wife that I can't take the trash. I'm not taking the trash out no more. I'm famous.
Okay.
So
my question is on, man. Good luck with that.
So my question to you is, and I say that, like I said, 100,000 is my no trash number. Hey, honey, I'm famous. I can't take the trash out anymore. I need you to do it. So my question to you is, you've already hit 30,000 on YouTube. You already hit 100,000 on Instagram. What is your number where you could say, all right, Mrs. Hartle, no more trash. I'm famous. I am a celebrity. I'm not taking the trash out. What's your number?
It's not a number, man. It's not a number at all. She don't care how famous I am. If I hired a maid or gave her a butler or, you know what I mean, hired someone to come in and do the laundry and the cooking and all that kind of stuff, then I would be allowed to do that. But there's no number. If I had, 10 million subs on YouTube and Instagram, she would not think any more or less of me whatsoever. That is not the way my wife operates. If I hit that number, it's more like if she wasn't driving the car she wanted to drive, then we would have a problem. So it's not like honey, you got to do this for me now, not by a long shot. So that's why I say good luck to you, sir. Good luck with that. I don't know how that's going to work out.
I love it, man. I love it. That's what it's about. Fun, man. Having fun. I love that. Now, I want to talk about the beginning of your business. Okay. And I say that to say, did you have any doubt? And what I mean by that is, of course, we have the Cabellos, we have the Aussies. They sell those designer snakes, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 snakes, and that's good. But when you're first coming into the business, ball pythons are everywhere. And it's you can go to a reptile show and get a ball python for $200. So coming into the game, you have a $1,000 snake. Did you have doubt? Like, okay, I'm producing these high quality super dwarf retics. How am I going to sell them? For this price point when somebody can go to that table and get something that's a lot cheaper.
I'll tell you two things. One of them will set up a little bit of context for when I did start my business. And then the other one, I'll tell you a story that probably most people have no clue. They don't know this about me. So the first thing, the context of it was having worked at Prehistoric Pets before, I was the sales manager there. And so I brokered some very, very large figure deals. And so I already had that. And then even with the other business development things, those were large deals on reptiles. But like reptile large deals really don't compare to other, like, you know, like, okay, I just landed $50 million bid or something like that, you know, for these other companies that I've worked at. So that was all within my comfort zone. Something only seems impossible until you've done it before, you know, and that's different for everybody. So you can't, I believe you can't like negate somebody else's struggle just because you've been there before and overcome it. And I also don't think that you can, you know, think something is impossible until you've, you know, really given it your all.
Right.
So that's the context of where I came from. So I had brokered a lot of deals. I mean, the biggest deal that I closed, I sat across the table from a guy, we shook hands or whatever, and it was over $300,000 for a handful of snakes. So that was back at Prehistoric Pets, because those guys are operating on another level. They just really are. So, so I knew that I could do that. That wasn't really a problem. But your ball python comment is something I didn't know that I could do. So I kind of assumed if you have a reptile business that you almost needed to sell ball pythons as your bread and butter kind of thing. And then you could try to do these exotic products on the side products, you know, like for me, it was super dwarves. Like, I don't know if anyone's going to believe in these. And so there's a lot of doubt there. So one of the very first things I did as a business was I bought wholesale a clutch of banana leopard piebald ball pythons, bought the whole clutch from Dave Kaufman. And so that I could go flip them and sell these ball pythons. I was like, everybody loves bananas. Everybody loves pieds. This is going to be an easy, I just got to price them right. I'll make a little bit of money and then I'll reinvest that money. And it took me like 6 months to get rid of those stupid, I think it was like 8 snakes or something like that. I was like, this is not for me. The ball python thing, like, no disrespect to ball pythons. I think they're the greatest thing that's ever happened to the snake industry. But I couldn't do it because like my heart wasn't there, and it was really hard for me I couldn't sell myself on, here's a pretty snake, bread and butter. Hey kid, you can afford it. Why not? I just didn't, that wasn't my approach. I had to be in love with what I was selling. As far as starting the business, I started it very simply. I had a handful of animals in my basement, you know, probably like if I was to set you up with a group of like 5 super doors to breed or whatever, it's probably pretty similar to what you would set up there. And in the first 2, I measured it quarter by quarter. So 3 months at a time. In the first 2 quarters, I was able to double what I was making at work. And then we decided to pull the plug on work and go full time with snakes. But I had huge doubts. You know, for years, I called the Reach Out Reptiles thing my grand experiment. I was like, I don't know if it's going to work or not. This is crazy. And to her credit, my wife was like pregnant with our 4th kid. And she's like, you should quit job, leave your healthcare, do all that kind of stuff. I think you can make it. And I was like, you think more highly than I think of myself. I don't know that I can do this, babe. And I don't want to let you down. But honestly, taking the big bite like that, the big leap, having the terror and fear of, like, if I were to fail today, I think I'd be fine. I could just go get another job. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if I was to fail back then, that would have been a big deal. That was a different scenario. And I'd have sunk a lot of money into something and not had anything back. And it would have been terrible.
Right.
So yeah, she was the one that really did believe in me and push me in that. But I will say this to all of you guys that are listening, that don't know if you can, you know, make a living breeding snakes or not. If you have a good plan and you, number one, just implement it well, it's action. It's about actually, you could have a crappy plan. Honestly, if you implement it well, you're probably going to do all right. But if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else ever would or should, and you should take that leap because at least you'll know what your limitations are, you know? And I think everybody can find something there. They may not be like so-and-so exotics, you know what I mean? From breeding to retail or whatever. But like what I used to do, breeding the snakes and wholesaling them, somebody who had, like those of you guys that know Titan Retics, you know how great those guys are. They got the retail side licked. They're going to take good care of you as a customer. So I kind of teamed up with them and worked my strong point, right? So there's a lot of ways to do business. You shouldn't think that just because you see someone else do something a certain way, that's the way you got to do it.
Right. I agree. I definitely agree. Now, I like the ball python side of it. I love snakes just in general. I shouldn't necessarily say that, but I love seeing different morphs and different, variations of ball pythons. And I'm still kind of learning about retics and super dwarfs. My question to you is, we know that, Ozzy did the Orange Dream and Kabelka's producing freaking Batmans and freaking Snowfall this and ice cream this, all kind of crazy morphs, right? Sunset, then the sun going down, all kind of crazy morphs. So teach me about the morphs, and not necessarily the morphs, but what morph do you want Reach Out Reptiles to be known for when it comes to the super dwarf retics? Or is there even a morph when it comes to them?
I don't think that it is about, so like everybody beats us to world's first. We've nailed a few world's first when it comes to like morph combos. We had one called the carbon fiber that was like a 4-gene combo or something like that we made first, and we made it in dwarf and super dwarf. And it was kind of like a brainchild, like one of those, like, I'd like to see what this looks like, and then pursued it. Took a couple generations, we pulled it off. But honestly, I don't care if we're remembered for any of that. I like taking inspiration from the beautiful things that people have done in the mainland retic world and then shrinking it down. Or even like, you mentioned Kabelka, over at Canova, some of the beautiful things they've done where they're using genes and, ball python, different morphs and stuff to pull out like reds or blues, or I've taken a lot of inspiration for what they do in the retics. But if I had to guess, I think probably more honestly what we'll end up being remembered for is the dwarf and super dwarf locality work that we've done. We're the first people to breed Karampas in localities. There's a lot of like rare island varieties. That's at its essence, that's what a super dwarf retic is. It's not like you breed a dwarf and you get 25% super dwarfs like you would pastels or something like that.
Right.
Super dwarf is a marketing term that's given to animals that exist naturally on small islands. So it's kind of like Komodos are giant monitor lizards. Super dwarfs are miniaturized or like bonsai retics, basically. So you get all that big snake personality in a smaller, more manageable snake. So we work it from two sides. I like making the morphs, the pretty colors, kind of like bring people in, like check out this purple albino, look at this nice orange ghost stripe, or whatever people are into. We try to bring them in with that. But where I find the most rewarding value in working with these animals are the rare localities that nobody cared about before we did. So like keeping like pure Madus, pure Karampas, pure Kalatoas. We're working on, we've bred, I set out to breed 7 different localities originally.
Nice.
And we've got 6 of them done and pretty well established. And some of them were the first time ever. They took me years to put groups together and tons and tons of money. Like one of my most expensive locality animals that I purchased was like almost $40,000.
Jesus.
To get one. Yeah. So, and we'll sell pairs for 10 grand. People are like, that's expensive. I always chuckle to myself on the inside, like, if you only knew. but yeah. So we've got 6 out of the 7, and hopefully we'll have the 7th in another year or 2. And that would be, if you ask me 10 years from now what my legacy is, I would hope it would be that.
I love that. I love seeing what you got going on. I'm a big fan. I don't want to talk money. That what you're making is none of my business, but I want to have a little fun.
Sure.
You're killing it in the super dwarf game. I'd love to give me a super dwarf. I think the retics, that's too much for me, but a super dwarf retic I can handle. But
that's their value proposition right there.
But exactly. But money wise, okay, you're ready. You started your business, Reach Out Reptiles. You're making you're finding you're making a profit. You're making money. What was and I don't want to talk money wise, but what was the first thing you went and bought yourself when you actually made a profit?
Oh, I tell everybody that they should take their wife to Tahiti when they first make a profit.
Good answer.
I honestly have, so I've done some things like that for my wife, but I haven't Reach Out Reptiles, we officially started in 2015. 2017 is when I left my job and I started it like for real, right? It was just on paper from 2015 to 2017. So we're only 6 years in.
Right.
I have reinvested 110% of what I've made into this business and the animals that we have.
Oh no.
So
Oh no.
I
You gonna say I went and got a Corvette or something.
No. I'm driving a 2008 Dodge Grand Caravan because it's very practical for picking snakes up at the airport right now. It breaks down all the time. It's green. I drive an old minivan. My wife drives a nicer car than me. My employees drive nicer cars than me.
So,
Well, two of them don't. But
you got to do like a Belka, drive the Ferraris.
No, someday maybe. But honestly, right now, I've been purchasing my dream, which was, the space to be able to do the YouTube thing, the caging the way that I want. Like, I'm building up super dwarves as a niche market. There's no support for it. They weren't popular before. So if you go buy a ball python or a corn snake, you can go get a kit wrapped up for you at any local pet store for one of those animals.
Right.
When you buy a super dwarf, nobody ever built a cage for super dwarfs until the last couple of years as we've popularized them. And so I've had to design my own caging. I've had to create my own, feeders and stuff to match their specific needs as best as possible. So all of my reinvestment has been in my building, my employees, the animals, their caging, the equipment that we work with. And I've pushed so hard that, we haven't. So to be perfectly honest with you, 6 years ago, I left my corporate job and all I determined to do was match my salary. And I've been paying myself the same salary ever since. I haven't taken a raise or anything. So driving a minivan. So that's might not be the answer. But like I will say I'm like $15,000 away from paying off my house. So I'll own a house outright. So I'm a Pittsburgh boy, man. I'm a Yinzer. You know what I mean? I grew up a lot in California. I get that, y'all fancy kind of thing or whatever, but I'm a blue collar guy at heart. Simple pleasures of my life, like what I enjoy doing with my free time almost every weekend. I take my kids, we go down to the creek, we catch some water snakes or, you know what I mean, a snapping turtle or something like that. And we show it to everyone that thinks we're freaks as we go down the trail and try to give them some appreciation for the natural world around us. That's literally what I do in my free time,
I love that.
No, everything I bought has been in and for and through Reach Out Reptiles for the snakes and the people in the community. So that might not be the most exciting answer, but
it's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
It's cool. That's what's up. You're reinvesting into your business. That's smart. And I love it. You remind me of almost like Mike's monitors. It's like, excuse me. You remind me of almost like Mike's monitors. He has amazing animals, and not just that, he's building his own cages for his monitors. So I love that. Yep. Do you ever see yourself? I feel like you've conquered the super doors. Do you ever see yourself starting to sell your own caging and your own supplies and stuff like that?
I would definitely do that. I mean, it's so much work to come up with. Like I'm keeping dozens and dozens of these cages that we've designed and stuff. So the intentionality is like, if you can scale it, if I can make it easy enough for other people, then that's fine. And I think certainly, like, I've actually already sold some setups and things like that to customers of ours, because my cages are specifically designed for what I'm trying to accomplish with the super doors. And so anybody following in our footsteps, that makes a lot of sense for them. And I think our particular cages will work for any kind of like medium-sized semi-arboreal animal, because that is what they were designed for. So I would do that, but it's not our main mission. It's just kind of a byproduct of trying to produce the best cage that we can for our animals, because we didn't see anything else that commercially worked. Right. So, yeah.
I love that. Now, anybody will tell you, I've talked to so many people in the hobby, just amazing people, and they'll tell you, like I talked to Ozzy, he'll tell you, when you're shopping with me, you're shopping at Louis Vuitton. I am a designer ball python maker. I've asked Kabelka the same question. He'll tell you, he's Gucci, or, he'll tell you, I am a designer ball python maker. And I feel like you're the same. You're a designer super dwarf retic maker. So my question to you is, what store best represents Reach Out Reptiles? If I'm shopping with you, where am I shopping at? Louis, Gucci, Prada?
That's a tough one. No, I think you got to go a little more blue collar than that. I'll tell you what it is. The CEO of Harley Davidson, like if I asked you what they sold, you'd say motorcycles, right? He says, no, that's not what we sell. He says, I sell the ability for an investment banker to go out on the weekend and be feared and respected in his own town because he rides a Harley Davidson, right?
I like that.
I would say maybe this isn't a good comparison because I think Harley Davidson's struggling as a brand to fit in the new world, but that's probably where I'm at. It's probably a Harley Davidson. I mean, I think for me, the super doors I always liken them to like a bonsai tree where you have this small, ridiculous amount of effort and time into this little tiny tree just to mimic a larger and naturally occurring one outside. But when you're sitting in front of computers all day like the rest of us, we need that connection with nature. And so that's what the super doors do for me. They are a intimidating, impressive, confident apex predator that I can just like have in a little bioactive cage over here. You know what I'm saying? And by little, I don't mean a 10-gallon or something like that, but I mean, you know, it's like you might have a house cat, but if I could give you something that looked like a male African lion, the size of a house cat, I think that'd be way more legit. And it would kind of like you'd hear like echoes of Africa going in your house there. You know what I mean? That's right. What super doors are for me. So yeah, I think we're Harley Davidson. You know, it's a bunch of good old boys having a good time. Don't really care what the rest of the world thinks. We're just doing our thing and maybe slowly dying. Or I think every new generation kind of comes around to that. You know, what do they say? There's like 7 midlife crises that we go through. Everyone needs to buy a Harley during one of them. You know what I mean? And just get away from the world and hit the open road. And that's the super door for me.
I love that. Now, I feel like, you know, lots of people make, you know, super dwarf retakes, but I feel like you are, you know, at the top of your game. You're the top of, you know, the super dwarf retake game. So I feel like I could come to you and ask this question, you know, for the people that are wanting to get a super dwarf retake, you know, and they have these thoughts about them. Actually, I'll say this. What do you think is like the biggest misconception when it comes to super dwarf retakes that you can say, you know what, I hear that all the time and it's not true?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that the biggest misconception was that they don't even exist, or that it's something like kind of like the teacup potbelly pig, like don't feed it and it won't grow. That's a huge misconception. They do exist. They're naturally small. You know what I mean? It doesn't have anything to do with diet or anything like that. They're genetically this way. So that's a big one, but I feel like that one's going away. So I think the biggest thing that we have to deal with that people should understand is that they're very frequently misrepresented. And I think it's because they are gaining popularity. They're one of the few reptiles, like if you look at their price versus say 5 years ago, they've 5, 6, 7 times the value of what they were across the board. Because there's a huge market and not a lot of producers, nice. Right? And so what a lot of times people are trying to tap into that market, they're less than honorable people, and they'll throw the dwarf or super dwarf name on anything and everything and try to get an extra buck. So that's the biggest thing to watch out for. The rest of it, I mean, you know, retics used to have reputation for being nasty. I think most people know, like, they're actually very smart and communicative snakes that typically enjoy being around you. You know, I don't know. I think we're knocking it down. And if you want to binge watch some videos on Reach Out Reptiles, I think you can, you know, make sure that you're not falling into any of those misconceptions. But
I like that.
Most people know they're pretty great snakes at this point, honestly.
I second that. Nice plug. I second that. Make sure you go over to Reach Out Reptiles. Check out all their YouTube videos. Do your research before you get your super dwarf retake, so that way you're not calling him and asking him a million questions. Now that you're here, I wanted to talk to you about a subject. You know, I told you that, you know, if you come on my podcast, we're going to talk about it because you asked me about it. So I came into I came into the game. Like I said, I live in an apartment and I work 2 to 10 and I sleep during the day. So a lot of my time when I'm content creating is at night, and when my wife and my son are sleeping. So I started doing live feedings, and I didn't understand, you know, that the detriment they are to the hobby. I was still new to the hobby, so I started doing them, and I got addicted to it. I'm gonna show you something, and since I started doing them, I've deleted all of them. I don't do them anymore because I don't
Now
want to be.
you're talking about specifically like live feeding, like this animal versus that animal type videos.
Not
in a feeding
necessarily,
situation.
not necessarily this animal versus that type of animal. It's literally just a corn snake eating a rat,
Okay.
doing what they would do, no matter if they were in your house or if they were in the wild.
Okay.
And so I started doing them, and I came to YouTube. I said, you know what? I want to start a channel, and my main focus was I want to get monetized, and I want to hit 100,000 followers. So I
Yeah,
started
because you
doing
don't
them.
want to take the trash out forever, right?
So I started doing them. I'm gonna tell you something. Look at those views. Now that was
No. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
10 months ago, 9 million views. 4 months ago, 1 million views. 1 month ago, 3 months ago. Every time I put out a video, I was getting millions of views. So do you feel like when a person is getting like a lot of views, they can become addicted to something?
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of science behind the nasty nature of social media that you feel like you're pleasing people. You know, click, 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 click. You like it, you like it, you like it. You know, and then the other side of that is like social media can be extremely toxic. You know what I mean? And that because these people are as fickle as they are to be like, oh, I like this, or I don't like that, I don't like that. I mean, everybody is. You think about what you're doing when you consume social media. You're in a moment. You want to just have like a moment to yourself. You want to escape the real world, and you just want to feed a guilty pleasure right now. That's what it is.
And you don't
right?
and you don't necessarily understand, you know, that you can people can use that to hurt our hobby. So it was like I wanna stop doing this. And not just I don't want to crap on the people that do it, but it was for me. It wasn't my passion. I never wanted to be the known as the live feeding guy. I wanted to run my podcast. You know, I wanted to run my podcast, and I wanted to make content. But making content is really hard. It's like you can make a content video. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's like you can make a content video and nobody will watch it. But it's like when you do something crazy or clickbaity, people watch it.
Yeah. I constantly make tons of videos that nobody watches, so I know exactly what you feel.
And like I went from getting a million views every time I dropped a video to getting 1,000 views if I'm lucky.
Yeah. It is very hard to be positive and constructive and still have people care about you. And if your goal is to like I live here, there's a building, there's actual snakes, there are people that I work with. I have a real life. I don't just exist as a talking head in front of my cell phone. Right. You know what I mean? From some remote location that nobody really understands. And that's my living. So we have a real world living, but there are plenty of people that make a legitimate living online. And it's a completely different space that is hard for people who haven't done that to make sense of. You know, was that stuff monetized fairly well, getting all those views and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm monetized. I've been monetized for years, for at least a year and a half. But
so like I had a random video that popped off. It was a snake laying eggs, and it was close up. And I think everyone thought it was like a nude female body because I would get all these weird, like, oh, you so hot, mama, I love you, you know, from random countries, and got like 80 million views on this one video. And monetized and you know, it was a nice paycheck at the end of it. And I was just thinking, holy crap, you know, if that I think it just popped off because people misunderstood the video. I was like, dude, this is a snake's butt squeezing out eggs. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that if you're actually attracted in the way that your comments suggest, you got problems, my friend. But
can I tell you, Mr. Garrett, can I tell you, Mr. Garrett, for me, it was, I didn't necessarily think about the hobby when I started doing it. And I want to tell you, because I want everybody to get this. And I'm still associated with a lot of people. I still have a lot of people that still mess with. Like Ozzy Boys is my podcast sponsor. You know, I still sure. I'm able to call Brian Cusco. I have Jay Brewer's number, your number. I have a lot of people's number and I still want to keep those numbers. So for me, it was like when I first got into the hobby, it was okay, I want to grow my channel. But then when I started meeting you guys, and you're like, well, you shouldn't do that. And then I started seeing people make content about me. It was like, I'll say it. Nerd made a couple of videos about me, and I've talked to Kevin. I was like, I don't want people to make content videos about me and portray me in a negative light. So let me just stop this. because I still want to run my podcast and be able to call Brian Cusco. I still want to be able to run my podcast and call Garrett, and they feel like, okay, I can come on his podcast and my brand won't be tarnished because he's doing stuff that we don't agree with. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's why I had talked to you about, coming on your podcast or whatever. And I know you've had a number of amazing guests. Like I said, I wasn't blowing smoke up your butt or anything when I said you probably have the best collection of reptile industry guests of any channel I've ever seen. So yeah, hats off to you, man. You have incredible networking skills. And I don't know how much you've talked about this on your show or whatever, but I think people have a lot to learn from you about just not being afraid to reach out and get a hold of people. Like you had to hound me a bit to get me on this show.
I don't take no for an answer. I'm very determined.
I'm just being honest. I mean, you've been reaching out to me for over a year, and finally, and I really like your style, your show, your positivity, and all that kind of stuff. And the live feeding thing, and just
I don't do it no more. I don't do it anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying, like, I reached out to you, and that's why my question was, I was like, Derek, I would love to be on your show. I think you're doing a lot of great things in the industry, and it speaks volumes to me that you are dumping those millions of views to pursue something that you feel is, I mean, it's hard to make good.
Do you understand? Hold on, let me show you something. So that video that did 9 million views, it got me almost 20. It got me almost 25,000 subscribers.
Yeah, no, that's not. I'm saying, like, it's a real temptation when it's in front of you. Yeah, but that speaks to your character. To me, that speaks volumes. And I
deleted them all. I don't do them anymore.
It's clear to me that you care more about the few people you can make a big difference in their lives than the millions of people that are like fly by night that honestly they didn't care about you anyway. You were just feeding their guilty pleasure of watching baby animals die or whatever.
Right.
I don't know, the kind of consumers. And I realize, like, animals eat animals. That's a bit of reality, but you're right. When you represent the industry in front of people who don't understand, they don't have the context of like proper animal husbandry and stuff like that. They don't understand. They just see it as like people torturing animals with other animals. And that's not the case whatsoever. These are also probably the people that like have no clue where dog food comes from. So, I mean,
I just thought I'd show that to you. Enough about that subject. I don't do it no more, but I wanted to show you why I was doing it. And I also wanted to tell you why I don't do it no more. I want to be a positive light in the industry, and I still want to be able to tap in with some of the most amazing people in the hobby. I want to be positive. I want to.
You always have been. Like even before I was able to come on, I know that you've sent a lot of encouraging messages to me throughout time. And what I like about you is I'm sure your boldness is what's gotten you all of these guests, but you're bold to be encouraging to people when other people weren't, or when they were going through difficult times. So you've done a lot of that stuff. And I can say that those of us that are creating a content or even just creating animals, the kind of people you've had on your show, we definitely get a lot more flack than appreciation that comes across. Even if people are trying to say that they appreciate it, very rarely does that message come through. So you've kind of like, just headbutted that whole situation and busted through for us a lot of times. And so I appreciate that. And I love what you're doing, man. I love who you are. And the fact that you recognize something that I don't think you were doing it out of a negative place or anything like that. But you've kind of recognized how you can be more than just 100,000 subs.
Right.
You know what I mean? That you can have an influence on the industry. And I respect that because that's a lofty goal. Like I said, if I did a bunch of naked lady videos, I could probably get up to 100,000 on whatever platform I wanted to pretty quick. But if I'm trying to do something real that actually adds benefit to the lives of people and animals, it's way harder. It's way harder. And the fact that you've chosen that path, I think, speaks to your character. So
I appreciate that, Mr. Garrett. Now I gotta ask. I want to talk about the snakes before I let you go. I know you're very busy. Hopefully, I could get you on for a round 2 down the road when you're not so busy.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
And it's got to be live. It's got to be live next time, man, because you're crushing it now.
Yeah, right on.
Like I said, I'm such a fan when it comes to your snakes, but I want to know, for people that's wanting to follow in your footsteps, what do you think was the easiest part of getting into the super dwarf retic game, and what do you think was the hardest part?
I'll make this real simple for you. I think the easiest part is the part people spend too much time thinking about. What genes am I going to get? What morphs am I going to get? And what do they make when I breed them together? That's the easiest part. I mean, you can just kind of look it up. Honestly, you could call any breeder and say, what's your most profitable project? And as long as they're being honest to you, they'll be like, oh, these ones, I sell these. I've been doing it for years. You want something like with super dwarfs, it takes 3, 4, 5 years to grow them up. So you want something that's been profitable for 3, 4, 5 years if you want to be safe. But I'll literally just tell you that on a phone call if you want to know. So that's the easy part, but that's what everyone focuses on. What you need to focus on is how you're going to, it seems uncouth to think of animals this way, but I honestly feel it's irresponsible if you don't do it. You need to think about how to take your product to market, which means if you're going to produce 15, 20, 30 snakes, how are you going to find all those good homes?
Right.
Do you have that kind of an outreach? Just because you can produce an animal that is listed online for 20 grand somewhere, but you don't know anyone that's ever spent 20 grand on a snake, how are you going to sell that snake? It doesn't matter how potentially valuable they are. You got 30 of those little mouths to feed and you're taking care of them. They become liabilities. And when you stack up too many liabilities, people become desperate. They make bad decisions and the animals always lose. So the thing you should think about, and the hardest part, is if you want to breed any reptile, how are you going to find homes for the numbers of babies that you're thinking about breeding? All of them, not just the 1 in 16 cool one. What about the 1 in 16 that didn't get any of just the little wild type that came out? You know what I mean? That's still a living, breathing baby of yours that you created. How are you going to find a home for that? And what I don't like is in certain circles and stuff like this, I know it happens in the retic industry more than, than I wish it did, is that people will breed for the one, kind of cool, fancy snake. And then they just call the rest of them like, you're not what I want. You're not what I want. You're not what I want. Yeah. It's a dark secret, and it's not cool to talk about. And they can argue, I'm not, dumping on anybody's techniques or whatever, because they could argue that it's better off, to, euthanize that animal as a baby, than send it off to a life of not being cared for or whatever. But my thing is, like, when little Garrett was a kid and wanted to see baby snakes hatch, I didn't want to be like, and then I'll pick the one that's worth the most dollars and kill the rest. You know what I'm saying? If you can really connect with the real you on the inside and help other people, like if you can breed and produce and have a business in such a way that helps other people to do the same thing, I think you are making the world a better place. And so that is the hardest part. I think it's also the most important part, is before you think about breeding snakes, what are you going to do with the babies? If all you want to do is make money, don't breed at all. Find all the people that bred and didn't answer that question for themselves, buy it cheap and sell it for more. You'll be finding the snakes home and doing a good job. Honestly, I think probably everyone should try to do that first, just to see what it's like to try to sell a clutch of animals. You know what I mean? After that clutch with Dave Kaufman, I didn't want to sell ball pythons ever again. You know what I mean? But everybody out there might have a different experience. So
I agree. I got one more question for you, because we're going to keep it to, I like to keep my podcast to 1 hour. It leaves room, we don't answer everything, and it leaves room for a round 2. I hope that you had an amazing time, but I got one more question for you.
All right.
Actually, it's not a question. It's actually a request.
Okay.
If you don't follow through with this, I'm going to be highly disappointed.
There will be no round 2 if I don't follow through with this request. Okay,
I definitely want a round 2 with Mr. Garrett, Mr. Reach Out Reptiles. So for round 2, I feel like you are the king of super dwarf retics. So on the next round, I would like to see you have a chain, and I would like to see it have a super dwarf retic on it full of diamonds. I want you to know.
I need a little bit more bling than my one T-shirt I wear all the time.
I need a little ice. Like, I want to see a fat dookie rope chain and a big old pendant, and it's a super dwarf retic full of diamonds.
I'll have to get 2 of them made, and maybe I'll send one to you and one for me. How about that?
That's love, man. That's love, and I appreciate that, man. Mr. Garrett, I want to tell you that this was probably one of my favorite podcasts. I hope that you had a good time. We learned about great time. We learned about the start of Reach Out Reptiles. We got a few of our questions answered, and we had fun. That's what it's about, right?
100%. Yeah, I'd love to come back anytime. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you as a person and everything that you're doing for the community, man. Keep growing and getting better, and you're crushing it. You're not gonna be taking the trash out. It's gonna be like next week. I feel like so you're just blowing up. Just keep doing that and tell your wife I'm sorry, or maybe take a little advice from me and just hire a maid.
I love it. I love it. Well, this was an amazing podcast. I'm gonna let you go. You have an amazing day, sir. Thank you so much. Round 2 coming soon, Mr. Garrett.
All right, brother. You take care. Thanks again,
brother. Hold on me.